This episode of the Beauté by Avic podcast is brought to you by Issada, Mineral Makeup and Clinical Skincare. Hello and welcome to the Beauté by Avic podcast, your online support community for the aesthetic and beauty industry. Here, we are strengthening and unifying the industry through representation, innovation, and education. This is a platform created and dedicated to the aesthetic and beauty industry, valuing unity and advancement. We serve to represent, support, and inspire you by connecting you with industry experts, expanding your knowledge through educational pieces, and bringing you the latest industry news. This is Beauté by Avic. I'm your host, Stephanie Miller, and today's guest is Deb Farnworth-Woo from Issada. Deb is an MBA graduate, a certified franchise executive, and a serial entrepreneur. She holds over 30 years of experience in the management of large, complex, and multi-disciplinary health organisations, including pharmacy, GP services, surgical facilities, dietetics, podiatry, nurse practitioners, counselling, and secondary care services. She also has significant experience in the multi-outlet retail sector, having held a variety of store and head office roles in Debenhams, as well as big shed DIY and home furnishing retailers. Deb's career has been punctuated by firsts. Deb was the first non-doctor to become a partner in a UK medical practice, and her group were the first non-pharmacists to own a UK pharmacy, also opening England's first drive-thru pharmacy. It's a testament to her incredible vision and passion for the aesthetic industry that she continues to push the boundaries of business to this day. Deb purchased Issada in 2020 and has continued to grow the business despite being in the midst of a global pandemic. Here to discuss business growth strategies and the importance of supplier relationships from Issada, today we welcome Deb Farnworth-Woo. Welcome to the podcast, Deb. It's so wonderful to have you here.
Hi, lovely to be on the show, Stephanie. Thank you for inviting me.
I was so excited to get you on this podcast. You're such an icon and respected figure in the industry that it's beautiful to have you here, and it's beautiful that you're part of ABIC as well. We start our podcasts always in the same way, and we'd like to ask our guests how you entered the professional beauty industry. And I'm sure it's a good story, Deb.
Well, I sort of fell into it. So back in the UK, I had multiple businesses that were all health related. So we had a surgical unit, a pharmacy, a general practice, and even a management consultancy that specialised in crisis management of GP practices. And I was kind of jaded. I've been in that business for about 18 years with a fabulous group of people. So I was the managing partner of a group of 8 others. And I was kind of jaded and tired and a bit worn out, and still loved what I did, but had taken that business as far as I could. And my husband said, let's sell up everything and retire. And he wanted to retire to Australia. So I kind of reluctantly agreed because to be fair, I didn't really fancy living in Australia. I thought it might be too hot for me. We sold the business and moved to Australia, but to get the visa, I bought what was the original Australian skin clinics, and just by fluke found out it was for sale. I had some knowledge of lasers. We did a few small treatments in the general practice. We had a sort of a holistic wing that had some things like pregnancy massage, hypnotherapy, some homeopathy and those sort of treatments. And we also had a fledgling aesthetic clinic where we did Botox. So I bought the original Australian skin clinics with the view of retiring, leaving it running under management, but it would get me my visa.
And with a view to retiring, right. I see where this has started.
Yeah, and then got rapidly very bored, and it was too hot for me, so spending the days on the beach was never going to happen with my pale skin. And I kind of drifted back into work and then grew a franchise. So, yeah, not quite expected.
Grew a franchise. You grew one of the most epic franchises in our industry that kind of led the way for a lot of other people. Geez, that's a great retirement plan, Deb.
So I'm a failed retiree, clearly.
Clearly, I mean, that's probably the only thing you failed at, retiring.
Multiple times now, yes.
Oh, goodness me. What do you think has actually kept you so passionate and so active in this industry?
I think because there's so much to do, I recognised really early on, the industry is very fragmented, not highly regulated, not very systemised, lots and lots, multiples of smaller owners, small businesses, people working at home. There's such, I suppose, such a wide variation in the industry, and similarly a wide variation in education, in protocols, procedures and standards. And I came from this health background where everything is regimented, everything has a protocol, everything has a procedure, a tick list to make sure nothing is missed and no stone unturned. And so there just always seemed to be so much to do. And so I kept doing it, really, is the best summary I can give you. And there's still a lot to do. Obviously, we've moved, it's been 15 years now, the industry's moved leaps and bounds. That's why ABIC came about, for exactly that reason.
Well, you're speaking my language. Everything you just said really resonates with me in particular, the council, but also everybody that's listening. I think that even nationally and internationally, we have that common thread that ties us, because the industry globally has gone through this massive change. And I think every country is feeling the same way about that fast change, and the need to adapt, and the need for regulation, and all of the things that go with that to change with the times. And so one thing that I picked up when you were talking about that you and I have very much in common is that you've actually been a part of every sector of our industry, meaning you have owned clinics, which are medical aesthetic clinics. You've actually owned an RTO and an education platform, and then you're also a supplier to the industry. There's not many people that have had that career trajectory and has seen every aspect of the industry. And that's why I think I resonated very much with what you're saying, because I've had a similar experience. You've had these so many businesses. Which one has been your most, favorite, for the lack of a better word, but I suppose the most challenging and the most favorite?
I think no one particular business, because each business has its highs and lows and its plus points and negative points. But I suppose for the most personal fulfilling was actually back in the UK when I had it was called the East Key Group. And as I said, I worked with a group of 8 others, they were doctors. And we did amazing things. We were part of a new system that the government implemented at the time, which was a system to allow GPs greater say over where healthcare funds were spent, so that they could cater better for their local population. And through that, we did some amazing initiatives. We saved money in one area and then spent it in another area. And so, for example, we focused quite highly on elderly people. So, if you're old and you're a bit wobbly on your feet and you can't go far, and you've got cataracts, you can't see the TV and you can't knit and you can't read, what have you got in your life? So we did a huge cataract initiative in which we had something like 300 patients get their cataract operations years earlier than they would have done if they'd waited for the health service. We had an unwanted pregnancy issue in our locality, so we set up a vasectomy clinic. So we were able to address local issues rather than national issues, and that was great fun, but also was very interactive with the community. And in return, we got the support from the community to do things like build a new medical centre. We had Britain's first drive-thru pharmacy, which the council didn't want. Yeah, the council didn't want us to do this. They thought that was a bad idea, but the local community lobbied for it with us, so we managed to get it through. So it was a very engaging, high focus, I suppose, and you actually saw health benefits for the people in your community around you. And I really loved that about it. The downside to that is also there's some health issues that can't be fixed, and we saw a lot of sad things as well. And so sometimes that was quite soul destroying. It was kind of good and bad. It was bitter and sweet throughout. But then when you sort of moving, one of the other sides of that was I worked with an amazing group of people. So we had a tremendous amount of respect for each other. We all had our areas of special interest, so we all tried to accommodate them all. We called for a full-time, a 4-day week, although they were 4 long days. We allowed ourselves extra holidays every 4 years because we needed longer breaks, and we just had a fantastic quality of life. But then moving to Australia, the challenge was completely different. So I took on a business that I only had sketchy knowledge of. Although you'll hear me say frequently, business is business, it's only the products and service that changes. But I took on this business that I knew not a lot about, and everything I'd ever learned throughout my whole life in the UK had to be relearned here. How to get a mortgage, how to get finance, what your tax rules are, even your driving, road rules. And to do that with no family network or friends to ask. So the challenge was huge, and I literally threw myself into that. So I enjoyed that too. Growing the
That's
franchise.
huge. I hadn't even thought that you'd had that challenge in your life, because not only did you create successful businesses, but you had to learn how to navigate life in a different country. That hadn't occurred to me, but yeah, I can imagine extremely stressful and challenging.
And even the language difference, because I know you speak English, but you kind of don't. So I can remember the first time I heard the word gyprock. And what's gyprock? What's it like? What is it? And I can remember saying to this builder, we were shop fitting for an ASC, and he was doing a wall, and he was talking about gyprock. And I said, what's gyprock? And he looked at me like I was an idiot. And he was trying to describe it to me, and I said, go get a piece. And he sort of dragged me outside to look on the truck, and I was like, oh, it's plasterboard. But I laugh over the years, over these been so many miscommunications. Like you call a unit, we would call it a flat. And I had a friend who was talking to me about a unit she was buying, and I kept saying, what is a unit? And she kept saying, it's a unit. It's
A
not
unit
helpful.
is a unit. Deb.
So
Oh,
it was really a roller coaster, and then as well as that, getting the kids into school and them having to learn a new education system and pick up in a different place, really, because the way Australia educates is different to the way UK does. So they were too young to be where they probably needed to be in terms of their curriculum, and so that was a challenge as well. But we loved it, and obviously we're still here 15 years later on. And then the challenge of building Australian Skin Clinics into a franchise was also exciting. What I particularly liked about that was the opportunity to allow people who may not otherwise be able to run a business, but to have a business and set up their own business and make a better future for themselves.
absolutely.
But of course, in doing that, we met so many problems with school shortages, which is why we started our own RTO. And not a lot of people know, but we also had our own shop fitting company in the end, as well as we had the balanced skincare range. And then, of course, the RTO, and also an equipment supply company. So it was multifaceted running Australian Skin Clinics.
And that's the best way to do it, because obviously growing a franchise at that speed, you need all of those facilities and all of those kind of resources at your disposal. So it's actually really smart doing it that way, albeit very challenging doing it that way.
And I think what a lot of people don't know is that the goal was never to grow so many so quickly. So I think my original business plan said I'd have one franchise clinic the first year we started the franchise. So I had the existing clinic, and then we were opening one more. And the plan was to run that for a year and see how it went before we opened another. And I think it was to have, from memory, I think it was 6 clinics by year 7. But literally the day we opened the first, we were offered the site that I'd wanted originally, but the shopping centre wouldn't let me have. So we were offered another site that same day. And one of the staff said I want to be the franchisee in there. So that one opened 3 months later, and then we opened 3 simultaneously after that. So it just escalated faster than we could ever have imagined.
There's a lot of talk about franchises and ethics and looking after franchisees. What's your philosophy on running a good franchise? Because there are franchises and then there are franchises, and lots of stuff in the media about whichever industry it may be, about franchisee rights and things like that. What's your philosophy on running a successful, really good franchise?
I think franchising is much tougher now than it was back then. And I think it's much tougher because of a lot of the bad publicity that happened around some of the food group franchises. My personal philosophy was if we all work together in this, we all win. Because as a franchisor, I need the franchisees, just like as a salon owner, you need your customers. The franchisees are our customers. So I was very much about education. We were fully systemized before we even launched the first clinic. So many franchises just get going and then some way down the track kind of say, oh, we should document what we do. But we did it the other way because I had that original clinic and I'd have been trading for quite a while. Everything was already systemized. So they literally walked in with every procedure, every instruction manual, every protocol, every document. The big challenge really is same as staff is keeping franchisees on track. So I think I naively thought the franchisees would just follow the system. And a few that we took on were quite entrepreneurial and wanted to do things their own way. So that was a challenge.
Yes.
And at the point when you're recruiting franchisees, there's that, you've got something they want, so they're going to tell you anything you want to hear so that you will give them the franchise. Sometimes they don't necessarily really think it through or think the implications of what they're saying or what they're agreeing to. And every franchisor says the first 12 are the hardest. You get this dirty dozen where you haven't quite worked out who the right franchisee is. And I don't think we had a dirty dozen, but there were a few that maybe we could have done differently. And so I think the whole franchising experience actually taught me an awful lot about people. But it was all about communication, keep talking. And sadly, the industry also changed. So if you think about all the discounting that's going on now, and a few people have kind of blamed me and Laser Clinics Australia as well for the discounting, but we actually took business away that was traditionally doctor based. So most of the laser hair removal was done by doctors and medics.
Yes.
So we dropped the prices and took it away from them because we didn't have to pay doctors level wages. We could pay therapist level wages. And so yes, we are responsible for reducing those prices initially, but then everyone jumped on the bandwagon. And then, we saw silly things, for example, shopping centres with 5, 6, 7 laser clinics in them. So people were trying to get in on the act where there is an oversaturation, and the shopping centres
absolutely.
and the shopping centres have to take some responsibility for that too. But they would actively play off franchisees. So if I turned down a site, they'd say to me, oh, well, I'm going to talk to LCA now. I'm going to go and talk to, one of the others. And so they actively try to play us off against each other as well. And so I think that whole experience taught me such a lot about how things could be better for the industry, and discounting isn't the way. In fact, we tended to discount less than others. We would rather add value rather than knock down the price, because you still need to take money to be successful in business.
Absolutely, because as we were talking about before we came on air, there's such little profit in the clinics as it is. Running a clinic is quite expensive. I wouldn't say little profit, but it is. You need to get your numbers right to be able to make a profit and know what you're doing, I suppose. And the benefit of having a franchise to guide you, because they know the numbers quite intimately. But discounting never seems to be the way, although that's what eventuated in our industry. What do you think the solution to this is now? How do we backtrack, and can we?
I mean, it's very difficult, but I actually think we've got a one-up opportunity now to backtrack, and that is COVID. We're now seeing the biggest inflation we've seen for years. Salary increases for our industry are high. We actually do have to stop, take stock, calculate our overheads, calculate our costs, and be brave enough to put our prices up, because the rest of the world is doing that too. But there's something about the beauty industry and the type of person who's attracted to being a beauty therapist or a salon owner. In the main, they want to make people happy more than they want to make money. And so if putting their prices up makes them unpopular with their customers, they tend to avoid doing it. So I'm actively encouraging my stockists to put prices up. And I've openly announced my price increases and said, you need to do the same, because otherwise you're on a slide way to bankruptcy, because if you don't put the fees up, you're not going to cover your costs.
Many skincare ranges have just 1 or 2 hero products, but when Deb Farnworth-Woo set out to develop Issada Clinical Formula Skincare, she was on a mission to develop a full range of hero products. The process was by no means a fast one. Each was formulated to the specific requirements of the discerning aesthetic clinic owner and drew on the extensive knowledge and experience she had attained in growing an international aesthetic franchise of 60 clinics treating hundreds of thousands of clients. Most importantly, the Issada skincare range is proudly Australian made using Australian native extracts where possible. Contact Issada to find out more about this quality range.
And I think education's a big thing. Again, it's something, it's not, even if you look at the feeds, I was reading a feed the other day, I can't remember if it's Facebook, or someone had asked the question, is anyone putting prices up? Or I think what the question was, a competitor down the road is charging $50 more for a treatment that I'm doing for $100, and this other place was charging $150. Should I put my prices up? And about 25% of the responses said, yes, you must put your price up because you can't be making enough money. And then the rest were on the fence. They either said, oh, well, everybody's got different overheads, or, oh, no, I wouldn't put my prices up $50. There's still not that willingness to embrace the fact that, hey, years have gone by and prices have not moved very far. And if you look at when we launched the first ASC franchise, I think we were charging $99 for a Brazilian. And now you can get a Brazilian for $19, $29, depending where you are.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. And rents have gone up, consumables have gone up, the cost of lasers has gone up, the cost of laser maintenance has gone up, the cost of rents has gone up, and salaries have gone up.
You think it's a lack of education as well for the owners? And I can see some franchises are still doing that. $29, $19 Brazilian and underarm, they're counting those as loss leaders, but that means your profit margin can't sustain. You need more staff because you're working on volume. And then, I suppose if you're working on volume, that's where things start to go a little bit wrong because, complications can happen if you're doing it in an express kind of way. Do you think education is needed for business owners?
Yeah, I think for some of the larger groups, they too have got a reset problem. What I found was staff burnout is great. So when you've got someone doing nothing but laser all day, they become quickly weary of it and exhausted. So staff burnout themselves is a big issue. Risk management's harder because the more treatments you do, the higher it's a number. It's all in a number. The more you do, the more complications you're going to see.
Absolutely.
But if you're tired, that's going to increase that risk. And if you're exhausted, that's going to increase that risk. I think in some sense, the chains have changed and they obviously have extra advantage in terms of volume buying, volume discounts in that way. So they offset some of their costs that way. But for the average salon, they really do need to be careful with their costs. And I know over the years, I've had so many salon owners consult with me. And when I look at their just general pricing, it's not rocket science to see that they're not covering their costs. And that's why they're struggling.
Absolutely. Now let's switch gears a little bit. You're actually very well known for your views on respectful supplier stockist relationships and the need for that. What's kind of been the driver for you in that area?
Yeah, so over the years, I've been in business now over 30 years. So over the years, I've had a great number of suppliers, and by far the majority of them have been awesome. They've been supportive, they've been honest to deal with, they've helped my business, they've worked with me in a partnership way in which to deliver the best result for both of us. But there have been a few dodgy ones along the way, and they tend to leave quite a bitter taste in the mouth, and made a couple of mistakes with bad ones. There was I'm not going to name names, obviously. I'm too English and polite to do that. But there was a fairly large, well-known drug company who made a lot of promises in terms of what they could do for us as a supplier, and did none of them. And then actually went around the industry telling everybody I was never going to get a second clinic off the ground, which made me smile.
Goodness me.
Yeah, and even to the extent that I've had a rep steal the staff numbers, phone numbers. I say steal, actually ask the staff for their phone numbers and give them to a competitor, so that the competitor could bring all my staff and try and take them. And I think some companies have just got a very short-term view of the relationship, whereas I believe if I'm signing up with a stockist, I'm going to be in business with them for many years to come. Because at the point at which I said, yes, I want to deal with you, I have already looked at their track record. I've already got references on them. I already know what they sell. I know what their prices are. I've done my due diligence about, are they the sort of people I want to work with? And I've generally met with them first as well. So I invest a lot of time in that prep before, and I expect longevity out of that preparation time.
Yes.
So when you find someone who changes halfway through, sometimes it's because their staff change. But when you find that relationship doesn't go the way that you would hoped it would, I find that very disappointing. And it saddens me. And, over the years, I've seen it a few times.
And so I suppose now you are a supplier, so you've had a change in gear. What should a business owner really consider when choosing the right supplier?
It's more than price. So one thing I'm aware of is the first question I always ask is, what's the price? And actually price becomes insignificant when you look at the greater picture of what you can get out of a supply relationship. So the questions that I ask, and this has been my policy for at least 20 years now, is, what are the goods? What are the benefits of the goods? What are the features? And my first decision, is this something that I want to sell in my business? And if it's not, then there's no second question. Having established that, yes, this is something that I do want to sell, or that it could add value to my business, then I want to know a lot more in depth. What is the training? How long is the training? What happens if 3 staff members leave and I need 3 more training? What is the marketing? How are you going to help me with the marketing? What are you going to provide for me? What opportunities are you going to give me there? Where do they sell? So there's also a big thing in the industry about, selling online, selling on eBay, selling on Amazon. Really the education piece around that. So for example, we sell online on our own website, and that actually drives business to stockists, because we all know that when you're looking at colours online, for an example, the colours are never truly represented, whatever browser you're in. They're best on a mobile if you don't know that, but not everybody does know that. So it drives people to the stockers. But I don't sell on eBay. I don't allow my stockists to sell on eBay. We're not on Strawberry Net. We will never be on Strawberry Net. So it's, getting that assessment whether the places that the stockists do sell are aligned with my values, or if they're going to cheapen or in some way be of detriment to the business, or whether they're going to be of benefit to the business. Obviously, quality of goods, efficacy of the product. And then finally, probably not finally, but BDM support. What BDM support is there to offer? And then, because I am known to grow monster businesses, my last question is usually, if I double the size of my business, how will that impact you? Can you cope with it, firstly? And how will you reward me for doubling the size of my purchases from you? So those are the sort of questions that I ask when looking for a supplier.
Oh, they're great. What I'm hearing is a real relationship between the stockist and the supplier, not just a beneficial relationship on the part of the supplier, really getting in there and saying what's of value to that stockist and building that long-term relationship. It's so important. And I love what you said about online. Not all online is detrimental. I think that the business owners now, clinic owners, tend to hear, oh, you're online, that means it's taking business away from me. But the reality is that online is a valid place to purchase. It's where you are selecting to put your stock or your products that needs to truly be aligned with your own values and your brand values. I think that's so important. What do you say to suppliers that still have that hang up of, oh, you're selling online? What do you tell them to overcome those, I suppose, concerns?
Yeah, so I think, we've actually done a lot of research in-house about who our online customers are. And we've discovered that they tend to be people who are not buying in a salon or spa. So they may have bought their first purchase in a salon or spa, but they're not a regular attender. So to go back to that spa or stockist is unlikely. So they're looking for it online. We also know that a great proportion of our customers actually are in quite remote places. And then when we drill down to, and we do ring them, so we'll ring up online customers and say, hey, our system actually allows them to say where they normally buy it. So if we can see one that's, for example, bought from a spa down the road, we'll say, why didn't you go back there? And sometimes they'll say they're out of stock, they haven't got the product, or I saw an extra item online, and while I was there, then I bought the product as well. So we try and inform our stockists of that, because we carry 1,000 SKUs, so it's a lot of SKUs, and we don't expect every salon and spa to stock them all. But we try and help educate them by what we're seeing online. So, for example, we're seeing a big increase in lipstick sales actually during COVID, which always surprised me because we were all wearing masks, but both during and after, we've seen a big increase in lipstick sales. So when we now talk to our stockists, we say, hey, these are good ideas for impulse buy on the shop counter, and then stockists will have that extra tray. It means that customer doesn't need to go online and buy them. So that kind of works well for us. And I think it's also important to remember it is a two-way street. And so looking at it from the supplier perspective, when we train staff, so we'll come in and train your staff on our skincare or on our makeup, or we'll invite to training days at the head office, that's a cost to us. So we don't want to be in a position where we're training you this week and we've lost you in 4 or 5 months, because we want to put that investment into you as a stockist as well, for the same reason, to get a long relationship and a long amicable relationship where we both benefit from it. So we train you not just in product, but our BDMs will train you in sales. Both my BDMs have been clinic managers. One worked for Australian Skin Clinics, was one of my best managers there. And so they all understand how to run teams, how to do incentive programs, how to do value add promotions. So they will help you in any way that you need help. And for a lot of salon and spa owners who've not got a great deal of business experience, this is a lot of extra value that we will add to you. And that's your kind of reward, I guess, for staying with us for longevity.
That sounds wonderful. I love the fact that you've actually employed one of your one of your staff from your laser clinics actually to help your stockists. That's brilliant. That's very smart, putting somebody in that BDM type of role, is that you really get that value from your staff member to teach not only how to sell your product, but how to be successful and how to sell in general. I think I love that about what you said. So who is the ideal Issada stockist? What do they look like?
So we love to work with people who are genuinely passionate, obviously, about skin and healthy skin, because both the makeup's full of antioxidants, vitamins, minerals, and so it's skincare. So we really want people who really do understand skin health and healthy skin. We love to work with people who are ambitious, who've got a dream to have an amazing business and to grow it forward. We also want to be involved with people who are safe practitioners. So we actually have refused to stock 1 or 2 who we've considered not well enough trained or working outside of, I would say, their scope of experience, because we don't want to be associated with adverse events. So we look for safe practitioners who are well educated and those who also want to educate their clients. So believe it or not, when we get an application in, we actually go and check out social media, anywhere we can make contact with that stockist and just kind of examine their policies, their practices. Are they professional? Do they represent or would they represent our brand in a way that we would want them represented, products represented?
Oh, I love those standards. I think that's really important. What's what we promote, especially in ABIC, is those elevation of standards. And of course, you've actually decided to become a foundation member of ABIC. Can I ask you, why did you decide to choose ABIC to support? And what do you think our industry really needs in terms of advancement and improvement?
Oh, so look, I jumped in with ABIC because I could see all the great work you were doing. Right at the time when the industry really needed it most, right at the time when, COVID was happening and all of that, you
Mm.
stood up and spoke for the people. And to be honest with you, I was head down just dealing with my problems. But you did amazingly well. And I think your voice, your tone, the way you speak, your passion is amazing. What appealed to me is that I've always been, even back in the UK, I used to get involved at either local or national level on various things that affected the businesses that I was in. So at one point I was on think tank panels for the Prime Minister's Office of Public Reform, looking at healthcare reforms, and I worked with national committees on some of the initiatives we did in the UK. We even trialled some GP contracts nationally. We wrote one that was later adopted as the national contract for doctors. So I've always tried to work at, get my head above the parapet, get my head above the day-to-day and see the bigger picture. And I think that's probably contributed to my success in business. And so I like to continue to do that and to continue to share my knowledge. And I have a great deal of knowledge now. So that was why I jumped in. And I think, I looked at your other partners, and I think you're working with some great suppliers there, people like Kane at Global Beauty and others. And I thought, yes, this is a group that I do want to be involved with.
And thank you so much for deciding that. It's people such as yourself, real pioneers of the industry and forward thinkers that have come together to try to unify and really go, there's a huge challenge here. It's takes all of us united to make a big difference. And I think it's really heartwarming to see, and it's a special thing because our industry really needed it. It came at a time where, for the past 20 years, we haven't had unified leadership or unified representation to government. Yes, absolutely. That's not taking away from all the wonderful groups that do such hard work in the regulatory space or, in representing us. But I think that unification and the broad umbrella of the whole of beauty and aesthetics under one roof, I think was really important, given the fact that our sectors, our beauty sectors intersect with our medical aesthetic sectors now daily. We have nurses and doctors, walking into beauty salons, actually performing those treatments, and that intersect, that real symbiosis is what we need to cultivate. And having somebody like you that has been in those sectors is really invaluable. So I just want to say thank you so much for dedicating your time and funds and generosity to this. And I hope it encourages more people to, look at your example and say, look, we all need to come together and do something, because in 20 years' time, if we do it now, wow, can you imagine where our industry will end up? So it's very, very special. Thank you so much, Deb. And thank you for coming on the podcast. It's such a pleasure having you. It's so exciting.
You're welcome. It's fun. And look, I'm always happy to talk to people about their problems in business or their hopes for the future, because I think the more people do talk and discuss, what's going on in real life in real terms, the more beneficial it is. And I even encourage stockists to do the same with their staff, because I think every staff member thinks we all learn 10 times more than we actually do. And, and I think only by education, by sharing the knowledge, are we doing the right thing by our staff? I think every salon owner is afraid their staff will leave and set up on their own. Well, they're more likely to do that not knowing what goes on in real life in business than they are if they really knew. It's true.
That's the truth. No wiser words have been spoken, I tell you now. Oh my, and we love what you're doing with Issada. I mean, it's really just starting to be everywhere. I mean, it was a well-established brand when you took it over, but it just seems to be progressing so well. And I think you're doing more things with it as well, aren't you? Launching your own skincare, or you have launched your own skincare brand?
Yeah, so the skincare was launched in 2020, just before Christmas. I think it
Wow.
was October, November. Yeah, we've had a huge uptake on that. We surpassed our targets and plans that first year, and we're on track this year. So we've got a 22 product retail range, which is soon to be 24 because we're launching 2 new products this month. And then we've got, I've forgotten how many now, but we've got professional range to go with that as well.
Oh,
And
that's
then,
brilliant.
yeah, and then even on the makeup range, we've broadened that. So we've got, we've changed the rules about buying. So the way in which Issada previously sold products, you had to have certain blocks and certain amounts of products. We've been more flexible is the way I describe it. So yeah, so we give the stockists more flexibility about which elements they have. And yeah, that's going great, guns. And we've put on, I think, about 25% in the past 12 months growth, which is good given that we've still been plagued with COVID and a lot of staff sickness and things like that.
That's wonderful. Congratulations. I know we're going to be seeing so much more of Issada, and definitely of you in ABIC as well. So thank you again for joining us, and please come back and tell us how you're progressing with everything.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Lovely to talk to you.
You've reached the end of another episode of the Beauty by ABIC podcast, your online support community for the aesthetic and beauty industry. Thank you for listening, and until next time, stay connected.